The ultimate paradox of the modern American diet is that we have never paid more for fast food, yet we have never been more thoroughly insulted by its quality. We are living through the death of the cheap, reliable meal, and nowhere is this economic bloodbath more apparent than in the American burger industry. Think about it. A standard brown bag combo meal, something that used to be the financial safety net for a working-class family, now routinely pushes past $15, $18, or even $20. We are paying casual dining prices to sit in plastic booths under fluorescent lights, huffing the scent of old frying oil, and the industry's response to our thinning wallets. It is not to improve the beef, pay their workers a thriving wage, or fix their broken shake machines. No, the response has been a masterclass in corporate gaslighting, closing hundreds of locations overnight, quietly filing for bankruptcy protection, and cooking up dystopian algorithms to squeeze an extra 50 cents out of you when you are at your hungriest. Right now, in 2026, the American burger landscape is fractured into two distinct worlds. On one side, you have a handful of regional empires that are quietly doing everything right, maintaining fanatical quality control, keeping prices low enough to feel like a throwback to a saner decade, and expanding with clinical precision. On the other side, you have a desperate, scrambling cohort of legacy titans and over-leveraged tech-chasing chains that are in absolute freefall. The gap between the best and the worst has officially become a chasm. It is no longer just a question of whether your fries arrive hot. It is an existential battle for survival, where iconic brands are being systematically dismantled by their own executive boards. To understand how deep this rot goes, look no further than the bottom of the barrel. Jack in the Box, a brand that has been flipping patties for 3/4 of a century, is currently burning through its system. In the first quarter of 2026, their system-wide sales plummeted by over 7%. Their brilliant corporate salvation strategy? Shutting down up to 200 locations across the country and telling investors they are simplifying the business. That is corporate speak for trying to stop a sucking chest wound with a band-aid. Walk into almost any location today, and the Yelp reviews read like a collective cry for help. Surly service, overpriced hockey pucks, and an identity crisis that has turned a late-night stoner haven into a ghost town. But Jack in the Box is just a symptom. The real crisis is systemic, and it exposes a massive open loop that the fast food giants do not want you to investigate. How is it that a multi-billion-dollar industry, fueled by an addictive universal love for ground beef and melted cheese, managed to break its own money machine? How did we get to a point where a company like BurgerFi, the darling of the hormone-free premium beef movement, could implode into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, leaving empty shells of restaurants scattered across the East Coast? Why are legacy players like Hardee's and Carl's Jr. quietly pulling the plug on dozens of Midwestern and coastal locations without warning, leaving local communities to find out their favorite drive-thru is dead only when the menu boards go dark? The answers to these questions do not lie in simple inflation or changing consumer tastes. That is the convenient lie told on earnings calls. The true culprit is a toxic cocktail of predatory private equity debt, aggressive, short-sighted overexpansion, and a fundamental, staggering disrespect for the person standing on the other side of the counter. The corporate suits looked at the burger, a symbol of American democratic dining, and saw an asset to be financialized, optimized, and stripped of its value until there was nothing left but lukewarm pink slime and a $12 receipt. The rules of the game are changing right now because the consumer has finally hit a breaking point. When a family of 4 realizes that a trip to a fast food drive-thru costs the same as a sit-down meal at a local diner, the habit breaks. And when that habit breaks, empires fall. Over the next 20 minutes, we are going to trace the money, the geographic traps, and the sheer corporate hubris that built this crisis, counting down 16 of the biggest burger chains in America from worst to best, exposing exactly who is cheating you, who is failing, and who has managed to keep the promise of a great American burger alive. To find the exact moment the foundations of the American burger market began to crack, one must look at the structural choices made during the real estate boom of the early 2000s and the subsequent private equity buyout wave. The current crisis of 2026 is not an overnight anomaly. It is the mathematical consequence of a geographic and financial trap set over 2 decades ago. For generations, fast food chains operated on a simple franchise model where corporate entities made money from supply chains and a small percentage of sales. However, the entry of major Wall Street investment firms shifted the objective from selling food to financializing real estate. Under this architecture, the physical land beneath the griddles became more valuable to executives than the quality of the beef being cooked on them. This corporate architecture directly explains the aggressive overexpansion that eventually choked brands like Hardee's, Carl's Jr., and Burger King. During the decade leading up to the pandemic, these chains engaged in a hyper-aggressive footprint expansion, frequently placing multiple locations within a 3-mile radius of one another. The strategy relied on cheap corporate debt and the assumption that consumer traffic would grow indefinitely. When inflation began its steep ascent in the early 2020s, the cost of raw materials, specifically wholesale ground beef, potatoes, and cooking oil, skyrocketed by over 40%. Chains that had piled billions of dollars of debt onto their balance sheets suddenly found themselves unable to cover their fixed operational overhead. The geographic trap snapped shut when the population distribution across America began to shift. Legacy chains like Hardee's had historically anchored their footprint in small, rural Midwestern and Southern towns, acting as community hubs. As young demographics migrated toward major metropolitan suburbs, these rural locations faced a permanent decline in foot traffic. Because these properties were tied to rigid, 15-year commercial leases signed during the peak of the market, parent companies found themselves trapped paying high rents on unprofitable storefronts. Between late 2022 and the beginning of 2026, CKE Restaurants quietly terminated operations at dozens of underperforming rural locations. The closures were executed with no public announcements, leaving local populations with sudden commercial vacancies. A parallel structural failure occurred at Burger King, where decades of corporate neglect caught up with the franchise system. In April of 2025, Consolidated Burger Holdings, an operator controlling 57 units across Florida and Georgia, collapsed into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. This was not an isolated incident. It followed the 2023 bankruptcies of major operators like Tom's King and Meridian Restaurants, which collectively managed hundreds of locations. The operational records from these legal proceedings reveal a bitter clash of interests. Corporate headquarters demanded that cash-strapped franchisees invest between $200,000 and $500,000 per location for digital drive-through upgrades and cosmetic building remodels under the Reclaim the Flame initiative. Franchises, facing soaring labor costs and lower traffic, simply ran out of capital. While legacy brands suffocated under debt and real estate traps, the fast casual segment tried to reinvent the economics of the burger, leading to a different kind of financial disaster. BurgerFi entered the market with an ambitious value proposition: position the burger as a premium, ethical product. They banned hormones, antibiotics, and steroids, charging a premium price to match. For a short window, affluent consumers accepted the $9 price tag for a standalone patty. However, the corporate leadership made a fatal error in calculation. Seeking immediate scale to appease shareholders, BurgerFi acquired Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza in a debt-fueled transaction that strained their cash reserves. When consumer spending tightened, the premium pricing model backfired. By 2024, individual locations could no longer maintain consistent standards due to rapid staff turnover and supply chain disruptions. The brand filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy as their debt obligations completely eclipsed their operating income. By the time 2025 turned into 2026, the brand was forced to sell off assets and allow private investors to buy distressed locations at a fraction of their original value. Trying to rebuild a fractured reputation. The historical timeline demonstrates that the burger industry's current vulnerability is rooted in a fundamental mistake: treating a volume-based business as a high-margin luxury concept. McDonald's, the undisputed volume leader with over 44,000 global locations, spent the last 10 years prices at a rate that far outpaced general inflation. Internal data indicates that McDonald's menu prices increased by over 100% in certain domestic markets over the past decade. This pricing strategy temporarily inflated corporate revenue, but it created an immense customer satisfaction deficit. The American Customer Satisfaction Index consistently flagged McDonald's as the lowest-rated major burger chain, culminating in a severe sales slump in early 2025. The entry of an E. coli outbreak tied to Quarter Pounder slivered onions in late 2024 further destabilized the giant. The outbreak did more than cause physical illness. It exposed the vulnerabilities of a hyper-centralized supply chain, where a single contaminated processing facility could paralyze food service across multiple states. McDonald's was forced to spend tens of millions of dollars on marketing campaigns and aggressive value menu rollouts in early 2026 to win back the low-income consumer base they had spent years alienating. The historical record shows that when value is stripped from the fast food equation, the entire corporate structure stumbles. The chains that are currently losing the battle in 2026 are the ones that treated their customers as captive data points rather than diners with choices. The current operational reality of 2026 reveals a bitter battleground where corporate experimentation, soaring menu prices, and consumer resistance have reached a structural boiling point. The single most volatile flashpoint in this ongoing conflict occurred at Wendy's. In February of 2024, the corporate leadership announced a $30 million investment in AI-powered digital menu boards designed to facilitate dynamic pricing. While executives framed this technology as a tool for off-peak consumer advocacy groups, and public market analysts instantly identified it as an attempt to introduce surge pricing to the fast food industry, the public backlash was immediate, severe, and mathematically measurable. Over the next 2 fiscal quarters, customer sentiment metrics for Wendy's dropped to historic lows, forcing the brand into a prolonged defensive public relations posture. This pricing controversy occurred alongside a massive structural contraction. By the arrival of 2026, Wendy's finalized operational plans to shut down approximately 350 underperforming domestic locations. Corporate reports indicated that these closures targeted older units with layout structures that could not handle modern digital drive-through lanes or high-volume delivery driver traffic. This massive portfolio reduction highlights a deeper industry trend: the complete obsolescence of conventional kitchen infrastructure in the face of automated, multi-channel food demand. The conflict is no longer just between competing brands. It is a direct confrontation between corporate cost-cutting measures and a consumer base that refuses to pay premium prices for automated, inconsistent service. This structural disconnect deepens when examining the premium fast casual sector, where the value proposition has collapsed entirely under the weight of inflation. Smashburger, which initially built a massive market share on the technical novelty of the smashed flat-top cooking method, has run into a severe pricing ceiling. Industry audit data from 2025 and 2026 shows that a standard meal consisting of a single burger, fries, and a beverage at Smashburger regularly exceeds $21 in metropolitan markets. Because the smashed burger technique has been completely democratized, copied by independent food trucks, local diners, and rival fast food chains alike, Smashburger no longer possesses a proprietary operational advantage to justify its premium pricing tier. A nearly identical crisis is playing out at Shake Shack. The brand remains a culinary benchmark, utilizing custom beef blends from elite purveyors like Pat LaFrieda and maintaining strict ingredient metrics. However, corporate financial filings from early 2026 reveal a deep tension between the company's aggressive store opening schedule and its weakening profit margins. A double patty meal with a side and a milkshake now reliably costs $22 per person. This high operational cost has created an architectural barrier for the brand's expansion into middle-class suburban markets. Investors have openly expressed skepticism regarding Shake Shack's ability to maintain high volume when a family of 4 faces a $100 bill at a counter-service establishment. The brand is learned that exceptional food quality cannot entirely offset the economic friction of an unsustainable price point. In direct contrast to these premium brands, a parallel tier of regional operators has established a highly defensive, successful market position by optimizing consistency over rapid price increases. Steak 'N Shake, an organization that has operated since 1934, managed a major structural turnaround by entirely removing traditional table service in favor of centralized kiosk ordering. While this shift drew initial complaints from older consumers who favored the traditional diner experience, it dramatically lowered labor overhead and allowed the chain to maintain stable pricing. In national food quality audits conducted throughout 2025, Steak 'n Shake consistently placed ahead of significantly more expensive, fast casual competitors, proving that older corporate structures can survive if they protect their core pricing value. This operational efficiency is further demonstrated by organizations like the Habit Burger Grill and Whataburger. The Habit Burger Grill, operating under the corporate umbrella of Yum Brands, has maintained steady growth by sticking to an open-flame charbroiling method that creates a distinct flavor profile without requiring expensive kitchen tech upgrades. Whataburger has similarly leveraged its deep regional footprint across the American South to build an insulated economic ecosystem. By maintaining large, 5-inch patty dimensions and offering extensive customization options, Whataburger has successfully defended its market share against national incursions. Even as their combo prices edged toward the $14 mark in 2025, consumer retention stayed high because the physical volume of the food matched the financial investment. The starkest warning sign in the industry remains Five Guys. The brand has consistently delivered high-quality, customized burgers utilizing peanut oil frying and unlimited toppings. Yet, by 2026, consumer patience with the brand's pricing structure completely dissolved. With standalone bacon cheeseburgers clearing the $11 threshold, Five Guys experienced a 4-point drop in the American Customer Satisfaction Index. The brand is locked in a direct clash with full-service casual dining restaurants. When the price of a brown bag fast food item equals the cost of a sit-down meal with table service, the underlying logic of the fast food transaction breaks down. The data from 2026 demonstrates that the industry has reached an absolute dead end. Corporate entities